Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. You can check out fullpresscoverage.com for this and other great podcasts and articles. You can check out this podcast in its video form on youtube.com/JetStrier, JetStriar. Yes, that is my YouTube channel. Remember to like and subscribe when you check it out. We appreciate it. Also, remember to comment. We like to hear the comments. That also helps with the YouTube algorithm. So go ahead and do that. And without further ado, let's get into a big, gigantic Celtics win last night, Sap, against the at full strength Lakers. They really took it to AD and LeBron. They looked like shells of themselves. They didn't even look like themselves. They looked a lot more to me like Wes Matthews and Marc Gasol than what AD and LeBron look like. So, yeah, massive win for the Celtics to take out the full-strength Lakers last night.
Yeah, if you saw on the bench, LeBron looked like he was ready to go hunting. He was wearing like this plaid flannel shirt. And look, basketball players can wear anything, and they still look really cool in that outfit. I mean,
he looked like Elmer Fudd.
Well, he did. And, I mean, we remember Russell Westbrook would show up in shorts and a sport jacket, and it just looked good because it was Russell Westbrook wearing it. And then Anthony Davis looked like Bill Cosby wearing one of his sweaters, you know, from like the 1980s. And
yeah, also, I thought it was Freddy Krueger, but like a preppy Freddy Krueger because it had a collar on it.
Well, then that would be Patrick Bateman, you know, from American Psycho at that point. Yeah. That's a preppy Freddy Krueger. And they didn't have Andre Drummond as well, but still, nonetheless, the Celtics went out there and did what they had to do. And Jaylen Brown was fantastic last night. He was 17 of 20 from the floor, 40 points. He was clearly the best player on the floor. All their starters were in double figures. And a player that I was impressed with last night for the Celtics was actually Jason Tatum. And he didn't have a really great night statistically, but you know what Jason Tatum did is maybe he's learning this. Sometimes get the hell out of the way when your co-star is having his night. And that's a sign of maturity, right? Because they're both young guys trying to build their brand. Tatum is 23. Brown is 24. You know, there's that dynamic that you have to always be in tune with. But he kind of got out of the way, played some good defense, did what he had to do, help out on the boards, move the ball because it was Jaylen Brown's night. So it's still a nice win. They've won 7 of their last 8, 5 in a row, and now they're tied with Atlanta for the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. And that's really the ceiling, right, Jet, for the regular season. I don't see them catching Brooklyn, Philadelphia, or Milwaukee. But if they can be the 4 seed, and then if they play Atlanta, the Knicks, or Charlotte in the first round, I think they will be the favorite to win that series. Again, that's the ceiling for this year. Can they go ahead and beat Philadelphia in the second round? I don't think so, although they have beat them 2 out of the last 3 years. Going 8-1 against the 76ers, but this is a different 76ers team. You got Doc Rivers on the sideline, who is known to blow big leads in the playoffs. We've seen that both with the Clippers and with the Celtics. So, you know, I don't want to sound like a green teamer because I'm certainly not a green teamer. You are, but impressed by what the Celtics are doing of late.
Yeah, but I'm a logical green teamer at least.
Yes,
Sap. You know, I root for them, and they're my beloved franchise. But you know, I'm realistic, and they're not capable of beating Milwaukee, Brooklyn, or Philadelphia. I don't think they're capable of beating Miami either, though they're less of a threat as those other 3 teams. But in just talking about this game, and now they have a 5-game winning streak, and they also they went undefeated on this little 3-game road trip, which was extremely unexpected. So you beat Denver, you beat Portland, again, I was being facetious. This Lakers team was like a shell of themselves. You know, they barely were able to trot out guys onto the court, let alone their star players. But, you know, it's an odd start time, a 10 o'clock start time for an East Coast team. It's at the end of a road trip, even though it's not the longest road trip.
Back up, Jet. They've been on the road for almost a week. I think they adjusted to that late start. Maybe it was a late start for me because I'm really old. It's a perfect start for you at 10 o'clock. But I think their bodies adjusted by last night after being on the road.
Some people don't.
Last week.
You stay on the East Coast time.
Man, you're really cutting them a lot of slack.
I'm giving them slack. Listen, it's a weird start time, 10 o'clock. And
what do they do if they get into the NBA Finals and it's a weird start time and it's 9 o'clock? Are they going to be able to adjust to that, or is Jason Tatum?
No, because they're not getting the NBA Finals.
I did say if. I didn't say when. Big difference there. But no, it's still a good road trip. You won the games you had to play. Now, you got a little fortunate that you played Denver without Jamal Murray, who then got injured 2 days later and is out for the year. But Denver was playing really good ball without Jamal Murray. So that was the most impressive win, right? Especially when you're down 14 points late in the third quarter and you come back and outscore them 40-8 over the final 15 minutes. Man, that's damn impressive. The Portland win was, a hard-fought win, and then they did what they had to do against the Lakers. It got a little close at the end because the Lakers bench outplayed the Celtics bench down the stretch, and a 27-point lead
the Celtics bench
dwindled down to 5. It really is. I mean, what exactly – Grant Williams does a few things. He'll set picks and play some defense. But Romeo Langford, I mean, is this guy already going to be considered a bust? From what we've seen, he offers nothing.
Well, I don't know why. I think he plays some solid defense. I don't know why. See, they pulled him out, I think, too early towards the end of the game. I wanted him to get the full 9-minute run when they had, a big lead. Because I wanted to see if he could get any offense going. But it doesn't seem like he's capable of doing that, at least right now. In terms of the other guys, Sap, who played at the end of the game, the end of the bench guys, Ogilvy, Nesmith, Wagner, Tremont Waters, Carson Edwards, those guys. I mean, their plus minus numbers. It's insane. Tremont Waters played 4 minutes. He managed to have a minus 17. Mo Wagner played 5 minutes. He managed to have minus 20. Like, how is that possible? That's so bad.
Jet, you and I could have been out there and had the same numbers as those two guys, right? Just stand there and hope someone misses. That's not even hyperbolic. No, it's not. I mean, if you're just out there, you generally don't get outscored by 20 points in 5 minutes, even in the NBA where, guys can make threes and then you come down the court and don't do anything on offense. I had given up on the game. When it got into the mid-20s, I said, this game's over, time to move on. And I was really never invested in the game. I mean, the Lakers don't have LeBron. They don't have Anthony Davis. They didn't have Drummond. So last night, the Los Angeles Lakers were more like the Los Angeles R's, like they were missing 4 letters from their nickname. So I really wasn't invested in the game. If LA had been healthy, then obviously that's a game that's must-see TV. And the Celtics have played the Lakers pretty tough over the last couple of years, right? Even last year when the Lakers went on and won a championship, they blew out the Lakers at TD Garden, and then they went into Staples and played them a tough game on a Sunday afternoon. I think it was Jason Tatum's real coming out party. He had 36 or 38 in that game, and the Lakers won it late. So they seem to play well against the Lakers, kind of like the way they played well against Golden State when Golden State was the best team in basketball. Remember, they had a 500 record against Golden State over a 3-year period, or maybe even a winning record. So they step up against certain teams, and then they don't play up to their level against teams that they should beat. But nonetheless, they're headed in the right direction, Jen. I think we can agree on that. Winning 7 of 8 and now tied with Atlanta for 4th. And I think if they can get the 4 seed, I think they can beat any of those other teams in the East. I think Miami would be the most difficult matchup. But Miami hasn't really shown itself to be all that dynamic this year. Again, I think
the Celtics struggled as much as the Celtics.
Because they've had a short offseason, as did Denver and as did the Lakers. Now, the Lakers are dealing with it through injuries with LeBron and AD, and they're kind of going through the motions without those two great players.
Injuries.
Denver has had a nice run when you consider that they had the same offseason as the Celtics, and they're 35-20, and they have the leading MVP candidate in Nikola Jokic. So those 4 teams didn't have much of an offseason, so maybe they're getting their second or third wind at this point. And also we see Tatum is taking his game to the next level. And in an earlier podcast, we talked about the impact of Kendrick Perkins tweeting out about Jason Tatum after the loss to Philadelphia. And then they had a nice conversation, which proves that Jason Tatum is an adult and Kevin Durant is not, because he just fights with everybody on Twitter. I also think what happened, besides Perkins calling out Jason Tatum, just before this nice run of winning 7 of 8 took place, Zion Williamson came into TD Garden and beat Jason Tatum. Then it was Luka Doncic who came in and beat Jason Tatum. Those are contemporaries of Jason Tatum, right? I mean, we think that Luka might be the best player in the league in 3 or 4 years. We think Zion might be the face of the league in 3 or 4 years. And Tatum wants to be kind of one of those things. Well, he lost to both of those players. Then they had a win over a depleted Charlotte team, nothing to celebrate about. But then Philadelphia comes in with their 2 stars, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and they handle the Celtics. I think at that point, Tatum's like, maybe I've got to step my game up because I've got to at least cancel out these other great players, whether it be Zion or Luka or Simmons or Embiid. If I can do that, then we have a better chance to win. And since that point, in addition to the tweet and conversation with Perk, he's a different player.
Yeah, maybe you might have something to that. That's a good conspiracy theory, Sap, that he saw these other guys come in and come into his building and beat them. Maybe it lit a fire under him. But yeah, you're certainly right. He's played a lot better recently, and as your best player goes, typically that's how your team goes. And he's played his best basketball of the season over this stretch, including a career high game for points. So yeah, and certainly I agree with you that last night the numbers don't pop off the page. 14 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, but he did a good job to be efficient and to, like you said, get out of the way, because it was Jaylen Brown's night, and Jaylen Brown was just unconscious for 40 points, 17 of 20, like you said, from the floor. One of those was a half-court heave that almost went in. He had 9 rebounds, too, so it was just his night. He was dominant, really dominant, taking the ball to the basket, hitting his threes. He was doing everything. So, it's nice to see those two guys kind of know when to pick it up and when to let the other defer to the other guy. They haven't done it all that often, but last night was a good example of it. And, as much as we can harp on how bad the Celtics bench, especially the end of it, has been, the starters were really good. Tristan Thompson was filling in for an injured Robert Williams. I thought he did a nice job. The Celtics have been a lot better since he's been back on the team. Again, he's not somebody whose numbers are going to pop off either, but he brings a different level of physicality and defense and veteran leadership, regardless of if Charles Barkley said he didn't know he was in the league anymore last night. I think Tristan Thompson does have value to the Celtics.
The last 11 games Tristan Thompson has played in for the Celtics, they're 10-1. Again, that could be a coincidence. But again, he gives you more depth. It's not necessarily that he's some sort of all-star caliber player. It's just that if Tristan Thompson is playing 24 minutes, even though they don't play the same position, that means that Shemi Ojeleye is playing fewer minutes, right? So that makes your team better. I think Brad
One
Stevens
can play, one cannot play.
Exactly. Whether it's one's a center, one's a swingman, whatever the case is, I'd rather have my better players playing more minutes, because a lot of the players are interchangeable. So now you can almost look at the Celtics as Tristan Thompson, Robert Williams III. If they can split the center position, you're going to get quality play from those two guys.
Yeah.
And then you go from there. You've got your two stars in Tatum and Brown. Kemba's still an X factor on this team. The better he plays, the better the team plays, because he gives them that third option. Marcus Smart, if he can do more of what he is really good at, which is play defense and just battle and give that max effort, all that much better. He doesn't have to shoot as much.
Yeah, he's had a good road trip.
He's had a good road trip, yeah, with the effort, the defense. I always think that he's their best passer. I really do.
He is. He's
think
definitely their best passer.
I think he's their best passer. I mean, Kemba's a decent passer. Tatum can be. Brown's not. I mean, that's a part of his game that he needs to elevate. Maybe he never does. And in a sneaky way, I think Robert Williams III is a damn good passer
he's
as well.
He's a tremendous
He
passer.
really is, right?
The only thing he has to learn is he doesn't have to get rid of the ball as quickly as he does. He could be a little bit more patient, but he's got great court vision and really soft hands and can whip the ball around. He's a very good passer.
He made a pass in a game last week. It was about a 30-foot pass that I don't even know how he knew someone was there. It almost looked like something out of the Kansas City Chiefs or the Green Bay Packers playbook with Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. It was like jaw-dropping. So he's got
so much, he's got skill up the wazoo. He's leaking
and it's not
skill.
And it's not just athletic ability, too. He's got a really nice feel for the game. Like you said, the hands. I mean, the guy is phenomenal on lob. So if Brad Stevens can build that really 8-man rotation going forward, they'll be that much better for it. And as you get to the postseason, everybody will be playing on a level playing field, schedule-wise. You play a team for 7 games. You're traveling the same way. You have the same schedule. Whereas in the regular season, sometimes 4 road games in 6 nights by game 4, you're a little bit out of it,
right?
More so than any other. And now we're going to see what they do over the next 4 games, because it's not going to be necessarily easy. You got Golden State coming in on a Saturday night game. That's going to be interesting to see, because Steph Curry's just lighting up at this point. They're right in playoff contention. Monday, the Bulls come in without Zach LaVine, who's in protocol right now. And then a big matchup is Thursday against Phoenix. You lost to them a couple months ago on a Sunday afternoon. Phoenix has been, I think, the best team in basketball the last 3 months. And then you go to Brooklyn on Friday. So over a short period of time, you're playing 2 elite teams in Phoenix.
Yeah, that's
and
a bitch of a
good team in
back-to-back.
Golden State. That's a tough one. And we don't know what Brooklyn team shows up, right? I mean, is Durant going to play? Harden probably is not going to play, and Kyrie might have joined the circus by then. So
Durant,
who knows?
Was on the bench today in Philly, and the Philly fans are like Boston fans. They're going to give somebody the business, and they're chanting, KD sucks, and he's throwing his hands up in the air like, what did I do? He's like, how is he not aware that he's the villain of the NBA? I don't understand that does he really not get why people boo him or cheer against him?
I don't think self-awareness is one of his strengths, right? So,
but seriously, he looks so confused. He's like, well, I'm not playing. Why are they chanting KD sucks? It's because they hate you.
Well, when the Yankees used to come to Fenway Park, when the rivalry was really rich and Yankees suck, and, Derek Jeter would just laugh about it. And in his mind, he would say, no, we don't. We've won 4 World Series out of the last 5 years. We don't suck. So, Durant doesn't have that type of confidence and that type of leadership skill that, say, Derek Jeter had when he was with the Yankees. So, yeah, I mean, the more I see Brooklyn Jet, the more I'm being turned off by them, not because they put this Uber team together. I'm not going to sound like Charles Barkley and say I'm always rooting against them, because I don't like teams that, all go in together and build this Uber team. And apparently it's really pissed off Dr. J and Charles Barkley, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a future podcast. But it's just that they don't play defense, right? I mean, Philadelphia toyed with them earlier in the year.
No, they don't have to, though.
They don't. But in the playoffs, you still have to, Jet. I mean, as good as the Lakers were last year, the calling card was defense. As good as Golden State was in winning back-to-back championships, yeah, they had Curry, Durant, Klay Thompson putting up incredible amount of points through efficiency. They played defense. I mean, Durant became an above-average defender. Draymond Green was an exceptional defender, as was Klay Thompson. Steph Curry didn't have to be. This team plays no defense. Kyrie Irving plays no defense. Harden doesn't. Even the second-tier stars don't play defense. And, there's going to be games where they're not lighting up on offense, and they're going to pay for it. They made that comeback against Philadelphia, made it close, all while Kyrie Irving was on the bench, and he was unstoppable that night against Philadelphia. I think in some sense, maybe Steve Nash was sending a message to some of his stars, or just trying to see if he could build the confidence of his bench. But I felt more confident that they would make the finals a few weeks ago. Philadelphia is impressing me more and more and more. Not that I trust them 100%, but I do think that the East is going to be a little bit more difficult than we've been feeling. I know you're all in, even though you don't want to be. You don't like the team, but you think Brooklyn's going to represent the East. I think it's going to be a little more complicated than that. And you like Milwaukee also, which I think could be a sneaky good
like
team
Milwaukee
this year.
Better than Philadelphia, honestly. I don't trust Philadelphia offensively at all. I have no confidence in Ben Simmons to step it up offensively. And I like Tobias Harris, but I like Chris Middleton more than I like Tobias Harris. So
that's an interesting comparison, because those are the third guys, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if they cross each other off, who do you trust more, Giannis or Joel Embiid? Neither's really played great in the postseason in the past.
No.
I think Joel Embiid has a more varied game than Giannis, but I don't think Giannis is going to bow out with an upset stomach or anything like that. Like, he might, with Embiid, he may end up spending an afternoon at McDonald's and not be ready to play.
All the expectation is on the Sixers and the Nets.
Yes.
That's who everybody's talking about. No one's talking about Milwaukee. So I think that's a good role for Milwaukee. Yeah, I get what your concerns are, but for Brooklyn, but those have been the concerns all year long, and they're not going to play defense, but they have the difference between them and like the Lakers. The Lakers didn't play defense. The Lakers have 2 guys who can give you 30 or 40. The Nets have 3. I mean, that's just you're counting on 3 all NBA level dudes to all be off on the same night. That's unlikely to happen. I don't know how you compete with that. It's frustrating. I don't want them to be good. I want them to suck. I can't stand them. But I don't see them losing. I really don't. I would be really pleasantly surprised if they do. Sap, before we get to the next topic, I did want to stay on the Celtics-Lakers game just for a second, because we haven't talked about the rest of the Lakers roster. We talked about the crap Celtics bench, which it's awful. But when you take away LeBron and AD from this team and you see what they really are, it's not a very strong roster. I like Schroeder. I've said that before. I liked him. He was bad last night. Their best player was Marc Gasol for a large stretch of the game, who he looked like a Marc Gasol from 2 years ago. This is the guy I wanted to ask you about, though, Sap, because you watch the Lakers more than I do. Is Kyle Kuzma just not? Is he an average to below average NBA player? Because I mean, last night that's a time to step up, right, and shine.
Mm-hmm.
He played 29 minutes. He finished with 13 points, a -20, 5 of 14 from the floor. He didn't even know he was on the court except for the bleach blonde hair.
He's the Benjamin Button of basketball players. He was at his best as a rookie, and he's progressively gotten worse. So in 3 years he'll be out of the league at this point. You really couldn't count on him during the bubble last year. I always kept saying, well, Kyle Kuzma should be the third best player on the Lakers. I don't even think he's remotely close to that. Obviously, it's LeBron, AD. Drummond would be the third best player if I'm power ranking all the Lakers, and then Schroeder would be number 4. Gasol did look good last night, which is kind of good and bad news. Good news in that, well, if he's going to play like that in the postseason, that much better for the Lakers. But bad being, if he's your best player, that does say something that your bench isn't all that good. Yeah, he looked like Marcus All of 2 years ago when he helped and was a key contributor to Toronto winning that championship. Look, KCP I trust more than I trust Kyle Kuzma. I mean, he can get hot from 3. Kuzma never really gets hot from 3. THT, I'm still not sure what to make of him, except he doesn't shy away from taking big shots. What I need from guys like this, I'm not, obviously Frank Vogel here like I'm the coach, but you need consistent effort on defense. If you're not going to be an elite player and you're not going to put up 15 points, be good on the defensive end. And there's times where Kuzma doesn't even look engaged there. No, he's regressed every year he's been in the league. He was an older rookie.
Any value to the?
No, I don't.
Adds value to the team.
Just another guy, a Jag, right? Like there's probably 50 guys in the NBA that can do what Kyle Kuzma does, which is be average to below average. I mean, yeah, he's got the blonde hair, good-looking guy. He's really embraced being a Laker, but he doesn't really do much else. If he was playing on, I don't know, the Memphis Grizzlies, would we even know about him?
I don't think he would be, good. I think this is what he is. And it's so funny that, there was a debate a couple of years ago amongst Laker fans trying to say he was as good as Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. I mean, they're miles and miles better than him. Mm-hmm. I just, if I'm looking at the guys who I think could play a big role for the Lakers on this run that I expect them to have in the postseason, I like McLemore and Horton Tucker better than Kuzma. Honestly, I do. And that's not just going based off of last night. It's gone the few times when I see Kuzma play, I'm never super impressed with him.
Those guys can at least bring one or two things to the team, right? Like Ben McLemore can heat up from 3. THT is a max effort guy who kind of has
he's good around the basket
body,
too.
But he's really good around
the basket.
He does. He's almost like a really poor man's James Harden, though. He's kind of got that same physique as James Harden. Doesn't look like he's sculpted at all, but he's crafty around the basket. So at least he can score. Even Alex Caruso is going to bust his ass defensively, and he'll hit a big 3. KCP can get hot from 3. I mean, we've seen these guys last year do it. Kuzma was really not a contributor last year, and pretty much he's been the same. With AD out and with LeBron out, this is a time, like you said, that you need Kuzma to go out and score 20 points per game, and he's bringing you closer to 12 points per game. That's not enough. Yeah, I think he's a guy, like I said, he's the Benjamin Button of basketball. He gets worse every year.
Yeah, LeBron and AD obviously elevate that team tremendously. And, if you look outside of, LeBron, AD, Schroeder, and Drummond, like that's a good foursome. You can't really
good.
That's a strong foursome. But then, you're counting on a lot of guys who haven't really proven much, like Horton Tucker or McLemore. Horton Tucker because he's, young, McLemore because he just hasn't been able to figure it out in the league yet. It's not like the Lakers bench is particularly strong either. They're going to have to ask their starters to play a lot of minutes. I'm feeling
they will. And the one player we've not mentioned, who again is a max effort guy, but he's undersized, is Montrezl Harrell.
Yeah, Harrell.
They ask him to play the 5 quite a bit, but he's 6'7". And again, it's different. This isn't 1984 where night in and night out you're going.
He wasn't that good last night either.
No. But again, if he's your 5th or 6th guy, that's pretty good. Look, if they're not doing anything unless LeBron and Anthony Davis are healthy, and unless LeBron and Anthony Davis are playing at a very high level, which I expect them to be. So, those guys can just kind of fill in. But when you need them to step up in some vein, whether it's defensively, making a big basket, whatever the case may be. They got that last year, and they got that from Rajon Rondo. And again, I was not a big fan of him not re-signing with the Lakers. I wanted the Lakers to prioritize Rajon Rondo, who now is with the Clippers and scares the hell out of me because
he's
just
rolling.
a guy.
Clippers are rolling.
He elevates people. He's a leader. He's a guy who has 2 championships. So, he can go to Paul George and say, look, this is what we need to do. He has a similar effect on a team that Chris Paul has, right? They're classic point guards, generals.
They also hate each other's guts.
I mean, how great would a Clippers-Suns second-round series be? Which actually,
fun.
It's looking like that could happen, right? Because Phoenix is the 2 seed and the Clippers are the 3 seed. That would be a fantastic series because Chris Paul and Rajon Rondo, they despise each other. You have Booker going against Kawhi and Paul George, and Ayton would be a tough matchup for the Clippers because they have trouble with bigs. That'd be a fascinating series, and I think that's what's going to happen. And it would be good for the Lakers because I want to have the Lakers avoid the Clippers for as long as they can. And if they're the 4 seed, if they beat Denver in the first round, then they would play Utah. I think they could beat Utah in 6 games. They're just better.
I prefer that. I'm a Laker fan, I much prefer that path. You want to play the weekend Denver team and Utah. You should be able to beat those teams, no problem.
And by that next series, you'd be used to the altitude going from Denver to Utah. Your body would build up some resistance to the high altitude.
You don't have to adjust to any weird start times, like I was telling you. So
like you were talking about. Somehow the Celtics miraculously won.
They did it.
A 7:00 West Coast time, even though they've been out in that part of the country for almost a week.
But it's tough.
It is. It's very difficult.
So who are the Lakers 8 then, Sap? Because you said 8-man rotation you'd like to see. Who gets nixed out of this rotation? We already said LeBron, AD, obviously Schroeder, obviously Drummond, obviously. There's 4 people we know for sure. Harrell, I know, is going to play. That's 5.
He'll play. I would think Gasol too, because he does give you some versatility. He can be a rim protector, not what he was years ago when he won Defensive Player of the Year. I think KCP is a guy that's going to play. And I think Alex Caruso, because Caruso can handle the ball.
So is Kuzma going to be out of the playoff rotation?
He could be. And again, it depends on what team you're playing. They did a really good job of that last year. Frank Vogel did that, or if it's LeBron James coaching the team, like you think is the case. Yeah. And a lot of people think that, with their bigs last year, you'd see Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee, and then you wouldn't see them in another series. They didn't play against Houston because Houston was small. So depending on who you play, Kuzma would be the 8th or 9th guy. Yeah, because he's just not as consistent as some of these other players that we're mentioning. Even KCP, who can be streaky, but when he's on, man, he can be a difference maker hitting from 3. Did in the bubble last year. So he's got that base under him that he knows he can do it. So Kuzma could be the 8th, 9th guy, and depending on who you're playing. I haven't been impressed with him. I think he's been a disappointment this year. I really do. I don't think he's really added as much. Again, he's a pretty good defensive player, and that's how the Lakers win, is with defense. So maybe Frank Vogel, who at heart is a defensive coach, is going to prioritize how these guys play defensively over anything. Because if you've got LeBron and AD on the court, you're going to get buckets. You're going to get good looks for even the other guys. But on the other end, you need everybody to step up.
Yeah, and I've said this all along, Sap. I think the injuries are extremely overblown, and that it's more about getting LeBron and AD rest than, them actually recuperating from serious injuries. If this was in the playoffs, they would both be playing right now. Sure. That game last night was a playoff game. And I think it's a smart thing to do. I'm not going to criticize them. It's a smart thing to do. Make sure that those guys are getting rest, especially LeBron, who has so much tread on the tires. Give him several weeks off. Say it's an ankle injury, like they've said. He's fine. I have no doubt that he'll be 100% when the playoffs come, and that this is more about rest than the ankle.
He should be back the 1st of May, maybe a little thereafter, which will give him a couple of weeks to get up to speed for the postseason. Anthony Davis is around the corner from returning. He's now able to participate in practice full bore. So, yeah, they should be fine. This is the method of the NBA now, and it has been for nearly a decade. Greg Popovich was really the first coach that started to implant load management. And so what happens is if the team that's winning championships does it, everybody else copies it, right? So it's the theory that I'm going to throw this old reference to you. When I was about 21, 22 years old, I was managing a video store. Yes, they were around back then. They were very popular. People would come in and rent movies, VHS movies. And none of them were open on Sundays until one of them decided to open on Sundays. So to compete, you had to open on Sundays as well. And that's what the NBA is now.
It's an old reference, yes.
It's an old reference, but it's the first one that came to my old mind. That now, the teams that are successful, look at Toronto 2 years ago with Kawhi missing 22 regular season games. By the way, Toronto was 17-5 in those 22 games. So it wasn't like they fell apart without him. but you had a fresh Kawhi Leonard in the postseason. If that's the MO, then that's what teams are going to do. When things work, it becomes a copycat league, just like it is in football, right? When Belichick comes up with something and it works, other teams try to bring that into their game plan.
Yeah, I'm not going to blame teams for doing it because, the goal is to try to win a championship. And if that puts you in the best position, then it does. But it's not great for the league. And a game like that on TNT last night, and you don't have LeBron or AD. And the day before, you had Philadelphia and Brooklyn, battling it out without most of the stars in that game too. So the league is going to have to figure out some way of working with teams and these injuries and say, we can't have these guys be missing these national televised games. It's not going to work. It's going to end up costing us money in the long run. Yeah. And whether that's hiring independent doctors to verify, you don't want to have to go down that route. You'd like everybody to be on the honor system, but it's not good. This is too many national televised games missing too much star power. The league can't afford to do it. If they want to continue to grow, if they want to take over the void that will be left when football goes out of business because of all the injuries.
That's never going out of business, Jet. It's not going out of business. It's not. You'll find enough dudes to play football.
Kids are going to stop playing, I think.
They'll find someone to play. They'll find someone to play.
Because I honestly, and this is a story for a completely other day, that horrific shooting that happened the other week with the ex-football player. I think that's just going to happen more and more often. Parents are going to be too scared to have their kids play.
Couldn't agree with you more. But if you come from an impoverished background and there's millions of dollars out there, that if you're an exceptional athlete, you have to weigh that at that point. But I think what happens with the NBA is you look at tomorrow, you've got Golden State coming to Boston to play the Celtics. That's a marquee game, but Klay Thompson's not there. He's out for the year. Now he's not.
That one's a legit injury.
That's a legit injury. But Saturday afternoon at 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific, you got Utah at the Lakers. That's going to be on ESPN. That's a marquee matchup. No LeBron, no AD. If you got LeBron and AD there, that's a game it's must-watch TV, right? I mean, because if those guys have been playing all year, that could be for the number one seed in the conference. And I am one of those people that believe that seedings do matter. I think even in the Eastern Conference, the one seed is going to have a much easier path to the Eastern Conference Finals than the 2 and 3, because the 2 and 3 are going to play. But it should matter. I mean, the Lakers could be the 6th seed and they'll find their way in the finals because they have the best player in the world. But it's just it cheapens the sport. And I remember earlier in the week where Stephen A. Smith was really pissed that Brooklyn had a lot of guys out, and again, his network was carrying the Brooklyn Philly game, which again should be a marquee game. And you had players out, and he was kind of pissed off. And I don't blame Stephen A. Smith, because Stephen A. Smith shows up to work every day. I mean, whether you like him or not, I like Stephen A. He's a hardworking guy. He doesn't mail it in, and he's probably saying, "Hey, look, these guys are getting paid enough. It's what I cover, what I love. We want to see the best out there. You don't want to get tickets to a play when you're expecting to see Daniel Day-Lewis, and then you show up and the understudies up there. That's not what you want.
It's not good. It's something that, again, the league is going to have to figure out a way to work with teams and players to make sure that they're not constantly missing these marquee games, especially when we know, it's a wink and a nod. Like LeBron could have played last night had he really wanted to or needed to. Maybe he wouldn't be 100%, but I don't think he was at risk of re-aggravating, the ankle injury to a serious extent. And certainly with the Brooklyn guy, with Kyrie, it's a whole other story. I mean, he's not even saying he's injured. He's just taking mental health days for himself left and right. By the way, I don't believe he's giving back game checks when he's doing that.
No, he's not doing that. And again, I'm a LeBron apologist. I think LeBron wanted to play every game this year. Again, he's chasing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the most points ever. I think part of the narrative would be to win another MVP, which he's not going to win this year because he's going to miss too many games. I think he did sustain a pretty serious ankle injury. Maybe he could have come back a little bit sooner. Maybe the Lakers are saying, look, just rest. And again, LeBron does what LeBron wants to do. If he wants to play, I'm sure he's going to play. But maybe they talked him into getting some rest before the postseason.
Right. I'm saying I don't blame the teams or the players for doing this right now because it's the best way to win a championship. And there's no punitive damage for doing it other than long-term to the league, but they don't care about that right now. They don't see it. So the league, it's on Adam Silver to figure out something, because this is not going to work long-term, where you're all these marquee games, once you get past the first 2 months of the season, every marquee game is missing somebody. That's not going to fly. I mean, there are some legitimate injuries. I'm not trying to take away, like I said, Klay Thompson, like that one is just, you throw up your hands. Now Jamal Murray, like those guys, those are legitimate. They're not resting. They cannot physically play. But some of the other ones, the Brooklyn ones, I think AD has been out, about 2 weeks longer than he actually is needed to be out, is my guess. Again, don't take it as me blaming the players or anything like that. That's the way it's done right now, but it's not good for the league. It's bad. It hurts the sport.
Blame Greg Popovich, who I love, but blame him because 10 years ago, the Spurs were playing the Heat in a regular season game early in the season. We were all excited to watch it. And Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Parker, they were nowhere to be found. It was a blowout for
back
Miami.
Then,
yeah.
It sucks now.
Yeah, it's not good for the product, especially if you're a Miami Heat fan and you got tickets to one game that year and you busted your ass to go see the Spurs come in and play the Heat because you obviously wanted to see LeBron, Wade, Bosh, all of that. But you also wanted to see the great San Antonio team. You show up and you're like, oh, they're not here? Like, well, give back some money to the fans at that point because the ticket isn't worth as much.
Right.
Like I said, if you're going to see
or
Hamlet,
to the network,
Daniel,
right?
To the network, because they're paying ridiculous amounts of money, and that's going to continue. That obviously is important to the league. But if I have tickets to go see Daniel Day-Lewis as Hamlet, and I show up and Joe blows up there instead, I want a refund or I want part of my money back. So that's the way it works. The Stars drive basketball more than any other sport. Football, you can kind of get away with this because they're in helmets. Many of them are faceless.
So they're not resting because the regular season's too important.
Well, because it's sick. Well, it's going to be 17 games next year. Yeah, I mean, I remember 2 years ago, the marquee game on a Sunday night was Packers at Chiefs. It was Rodgers against Mahomes, and Mahomes got hurt the week before. That devalued the game, but it still was a good game to watch because football is a little bit different than basketball. Basketball is star-driven. The NFL is star-driven by the quarterbacks. Other than that, we're not going to get pissed off because the left tackle is out. Tyron Smith's out for the Cowboys. We're not going to ask for a refund. But if the star quarterback's out, we're going to be upset.
Yeah, it's different.
But there's no load management in football. Tom Brady's playing every game. Rodgers is going to want to play every game. Same thing with Mahomes.
Yeah. So that's, we took a little bit of a detour because, we were talking Celtics Lakers, but I think last night was a good example of that because this is now happening, it seems like every week, where these primetime games are missing 1, 2, 3 star players. And it's not good. It's not good for the sport. It's not good for the viewers. It's not good for growing basketball.
Before we finish this segment, Jet, could it also be that it was such a short offseason, especially for the Lakers and the Heat who met in the finals and the Celtics and Nuggets who got to the conference finals? And then this year, it's such a condensed season, didn't start till December 22nd, and they're putting 72 games into a 6-month period, that this is really an outlier year. And then maybe next year, if the sport self-corrects and we go back to a normal schedule with somewhat of a normal offseason, it's going to be short again because the NBA finals are going to be in July instead of June. Maybe that will change somewhat. Maybe the commissioner can speak to his best players, owners, and make that a priority in discussions.
Yeah, it's possible that it's because of the season too, though it's happened, in the past few seasons too, more and more frequently. I wouldn't doubt that it's certainly heightened this year. And it's not just those teams that were, the last 4 teams in it. Because if you're looking at, the Celtics, besides getting COVID, Tatum's played all the games that he hasn't said, I've had a lingering injury. Same with Jaylen Brown. And Denver, Jokic has played every game this season, I think. I don't think he's missed a game.
He has not missed a game. That's why I think he's the front runner for MVP. Maybe that's important for him. Maybe other players don't care. They want to obviously win a championship. And it's funny that Jokic is the most durable guy in the league because he looks like the least athletic guy in the league, right? I mean, looks like he doesn't really train. He can't jump over a newspaper, but nonetheless, he shows up every night. He plays kind of an easy game because it's very fluid. He
makes it look easy.
He makes it look easy. He just looks like dad playing with his 4 sons against the 4 sons' friends. It's just amazing how he plays. But that's one of the reasons he's the leader in the clubhouse right now for MVP because he's played every game. Most of the other contenders have missed 12, 14, 16 games.
Best ability is availability.
That's what Bill Parcells said.
That's the old adage from the tuna. So before we get out and finish this show, Sap, because we were very Celtics Lakers centric, which makes sense. They played last night. There was a piece of news that I think took everybody by surprise the other day as LaMarcus Aldridge announced his retirement. And this is a guy we've talked a lot about recently because it's been we were talking about him as a potential buyout candidate, and then he became the buyout guy, and then he shocked everybody by going to the Nets instead of the Heat, where he was rumored to go. So this is the second big surprise regarding LaMarcus Aldridge this year. This one a lot sadder than the other one because he has a irregular heartbeat that he found out that he's going to call it quits and step away from the game, which is you never want to see an athlete have the game taken away from him or her not on their own terms. And that's what's happening here. I'm happy he's prioritizing himself and his health because he has a family, but you just hate to see it come to an end like this, just like it did for Chris Bosh. It came to an end because he had, I think, some blood clot issues. This is not the way any athlete wants to end their career. So it's a sad story, even though I detest the Brooklyn Nets and I was very upset at LaMarcus Aldridge for going to them. I feel really bad for him today. I feel sad.
Without question, he's been dealing with Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome since 2006. So he must feel fortunate at this point that he's kind of escaped any real tragic consequences for nearly 15 years. And I think being a veteran player, having a family smart enough to say, you know what, let me get out. I don't want to collapse on the basketball court. As you said, Chris Bosh did the same thing. And Chris Bosh is one of the brightest athletes I've ever heard speak. I mean, he could do whatever he wants in retirement now. But there are cases of players literally, collapsing on the court. Reggie Lewis, back in the 90s, and even before that, I think you were probably a year old when this happened, but Hank Gathers played at Loyola Marymount. He had some issues with his heart. He was on medication. He didn't follow doctor's orders all of the time. He wouldn't take the medication on game days. And eventually he collapsed on the court and was pronounced dead 1 hour later. A young man who had a promising NBA career on the horizon. But again, when you're 21, 22, you think you can conquer the world. With LaMarcus Aldridge, he's in his mid-30s. He's had a really good career. He's made plenty of money. I know he wants to win a championship, but he also wants to live another 40, 50 years, whatever it may be, and enjoy his family and enjoy all that money that he's earned. So, yeah, more power to him. He was playing really well with Brooklyn.
Really well.
Only five games, he was averaging 13.5 rebounds and 2 blocks per game in like 25 minutes. He's
a big piece of what they wanted to do in the postseason.
That's another reason, and not to bring someone's health into like power ranking the Eastern Conference. That's a big loss for them because I think going down the stretch they would be looking at him as center, Durant playing the 4 or whatever Durant wants to play, Harden. And
puts more pressure
Kyrie.
on the corpse of DeAndre Jordan.
Exactly. And if Blake Griffin shows up and plays some minutes, and it puts more pressure on Kevin Durant. And maybe that's good for Kevin Durant, so he won't be fighting on Twitter with everybody. He'll actually be playing basketball games. But, no, good for Aldridge. I think he made the right move. And I'm sure, again, as you're older, you've got your family saying it's really not worth it. I remember Peyton Manning. I kept wishing he'd retire because, we always heard the reports in the final few years of his career. He was one hit away from maybe being in a wheelchair. Is it really worth it at that point? Yeah, he made plenty of money.
The story with Gronk and coming back, everybody was like, oh God, this guy looks like Frankenstein. What's he doing coming back? Ultimately, I guess it worked out for him. He won a championship, a Super Bowl this past year, but
took a year off. Right.
It's possible. Did it take, years off his life and enjoyment of, his elder years?
Sure.
You just won't know that. And Aldridge is making the calculation that, basketball, he's played at an extremely high level for 15 years. He's had success. He hasn't won a championship, but he's had teams that have made good playoff runs. He's been an all-star multiple times. And even though this year may have been his best chance at winning a title, it's not worth the risk of, like you said, collapsing and either dying on the court or something really bad happening where your health's affected even more long-term. And so it's you're happy for the guy that he's able to make the decision, but you feel sad that he's not able to go out on the terms that he wanted to, which is every athlete wants to go out their way, and this is making it so he can't. So that is inherently sad.
Oh, without question. And we saw Julian Edelman of the Patriots retire, but I think he accomplished everything he wanted to accomplish. Won 3 Super Bowls, had a great career, built a brand, and now he can go on to the next step in his life. And I was happy to see Julian Edelman retire because I always worry about concussion issues with a player like Edelman or Wes Welker. It's like, get out, dude. Get out early rather than late so that you can enjoy the rest of your life. Same thing with Gronkowski. With LaMarcus Aldridge, we're talking about a heart. He could be out there in a playoff game, collapse and die. Although, dealing with CTE doesn't appear to be a walk in the park either, as we've seen countless times of former football players.
Heart issues are a thing to keep a lookout for the NBA players because they're so big.
Exactly.
It is a more common occurrence for these guys to have. Eddie Curry, I'm remembering a few years ago, had a bad heart issue too. When you're that gigantic and you're running, your heart's doing a lot of work. LaMarcus Aldridge is 6'11". He's a big guy. So I'm glad he's going to be okay, and that they caught it, and he's making the decision to walk away. But despite him being on the Nets, I would have liked to see him be able to end his career the way he wanted to on the court and walk away not because he had to, but because he was ready to.
Yeah, and he had a sneaky good career, right? I mean, I think he's a borderline Hall of Famer. I mean, you can have a debate for that some other time. 7-time All-Star. He gives you 19 points, 8 rebounds a game. Multiple-time All-NBA, I believe 2 times second-team All-NBA, 3 times third-team All-NBA, 3 times finished in the top 10 in MVP voting. That's a good career. It's borderline Hall of Fame. A comp would be Chris Webber, who I think was a better player. Webber's not in the Hall of Fame, so you can make that debate.
No, I don't think
Webber's
Aldridge will get in.
Aldridge shouldn't be in. So,
but he might get his jersey retired in Portland, Sepp, because Dame Lillard, that was the first thing he said. Aldridge is a very popular player. Everybody seems to love him wherever he's gone, and he's gotten along with his teammates. And the first thing Damian Lillard said, he was on Jalen Rose's show, that he was shocked because he's close with Aldridge and he didn't know about this. And then he said, we need to retire his jersey here in Portland. So that's the Hall of Fame is a great honor. Having your jersey retired in a city is almost an equally great honor for a lot of these guys too, because then it's always flying in the rafters or, a ring of honor if you're talking about football. So maybe that would be a really nice thing for him to say, hey, I didn't get to finish the career the way I wanted to, but I did accomplish a lot. And here's my name, for all time here at the, what was, I guess, the Rose Garden. Now I think it's called, I don't even remember what the public.
They change every 2 years the names Blazers, of places.
Moda Center. That's what it's called.
Moda Center. Okay. It's not Dame Lillard's house.
It basically is. So, I think I could see that happening for him. I don't think his number will get retired in San Antonio.
No.
But in Portland, I think that there's a good chance of that. And, maybe that's how, his career ends, is that, he reappears in Portland, as a retired player, but gets his number retired. And that feels a little bit better. That maybe puts more of closure on his career as opposed to, in what are we in April? I can't tell because there's snow outside.
Right.
In April of a season walking away. So good for him for making the best decision. I feel bad for him that this was taken away from him. You don't want to look ahead and say, how's this impact the Nets? Because it seems insensitive, but we are basketball analysts and it does impact the Nets.
Of course it does, because he was going to be their starting center in the postseason, puts more pressure on DeAndre Jordan, Kevin Durant, but obviously smart decision by LaMarcus Aldridge. Let him enjoy his retirement. And again, if he's ever sad, he can always look at the bank account because there's a lot of zeros in there. And good for him. He
you can't mess with the hard stuff, Sep.
No, you can't.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, no, I mean that's anything to do with concussion, CT, and the heart that really scares the hell out of you. I mean, if someone has a bad back, that's already bad enough. But you can kind of deal with that and live with the pain. With the heart just decides to give out. Especially, like you said, a guy that size, that's a lot to ask the body. So had a nice career. And like I said, he's borderline Hall of Famer. I don't think he's going to make it, but he had a really good career.
Yeah. So, happy trails to LaMarcus Aldridge. We wish him the best in retirement. If the Nets win, Sap, does he get a ring?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they'll give him a ring. I mean, and then that'll be a debate on, unscripted or whatever that, Skip will say he doesn't deserve a ring and Shannon will say he deserves a ring. I've never been a big deal on that. Like, give the guy a ring, give the guy a playoff share, whatever. I don't know. He helped you win some games. That stuff is so low on my list of things to worry about, but someone will be offended if he gets a ring. I'm sure someone will. And Kyrie may have an opinion on it. Yeah, Skip is going to be upset because Skip is the only person apparently in the country who thinks that Aaron Rodgers sucks at hosting Jeopardy. I've watched enough of the show. He's pretty damn good at it. And everybody else seems to agree with it.
Katie Nolan doesn't think he's good.
Good for her. Good for her and good for Skip. I think he's fantastic. He's got a great personality. He's quick on his feet.
You're biased.
He looks good. Well, I also think that it's a way to help the Packers because, maybe he'll kick a little money back to the Packers so they can go out and get some help for him if he's making $15 million a year hosting Jeopardy. How many people's minds would be blown if he became the full-time host of Jeopardy? Because you could do that because it's, I think, 43 or 46 taping sessions a year because they record, 5 shows per session. He could do this in the off season, but you know what? Everybody, Skip and Mike Felger, go, this guy's not committed to football.
People would go apoplectic.
They would go nuts. I think it would be hilarious. I'm like, how cool is this? This guy's multitasking. He's winning league MVPs in football, hosting Jeopardy. Good for him.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with him in Jeopardy. I do feel like he's done better than people maybe thought. Football player, but I love Jeopardy for so long. Geez, we're way off track here, but I would like it to be I'm more of a natural game show host. That's my pick. Maybe I'm just saying that to irritate you. I will never reveal which one it actually is.
It's probably a little bit of both. I mean, I think Bob Costas would be great at this. I think Bob Costas would be great at anything. I think he's the greatest sportscaster ever. Bob Costas for president, vice president, secretary of state, whatever job he wants, baseball commissioner, whatever Bob Costas wants, give it to him. He's that good. I think he'd be a great host. But yeah, let Aaron Rodgers do this. I don't think he's hurting the brand. I think there's going to be some more eyeballs on the show because they're intrigued by, let's see this star quarterback if he can pull this off.
Bob Costas's agenda for if he ran for president, pink eye vaccine.
That and 11-inning baseball games, not 9.
Yeah, that's our old producer, Christian Burgoyne's platform as well.
Yes, longer baseball games, not shorter.
Yeah, oh yeah. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We are, as always, presented by Full Press Coverage. Check me out on Twitter at Jet Stryer. Check Sap out on Twitter at JohnSap25. And you can see this podcast on YouTube at youtube.com/JetStryer. Thanks for listening and watching, everybody. And we will talk to you later. See ya.